Good morning. Today is Lemonade Sunday. Let's hear it for Lemonade Sunday. They've even got sugar-free out there, huh? Sugar-free. Hey, thanks for being here. If you're a guest, I appreciate it, and I'm glad you decided to spend a little bit of time with us today. And it's also the day we're starting a new series. As you saw there, we're going to talk about the end times and the end of time. And the next 5 weeks, counting today, we're going to be asking certain questions about the end of time. Now, we thought we would dive into something light and easy before we really get into the summer Bible prophecy, right? And we really want to stir the pot and get everybody thinking about what they believe. But seriously, with everything going on in our world today, we want you to know, we want you to be encouraged that there is a God who is on the throne, who's still in control, and who has promised to return. That's right. That's right. And this is a bedrock belief of Christians today, Bible-believing Christians, what we might call evangelical Christians, Christians who believe the gospel should be preached because the Lord is coming back. He will return. A physical return of Christ. An imminent physical return of Jesus. And so that's what this series is going to be about. Today we're going to cover kind of a lot in one particular chapter in the Bible, but we're going to talk about apocalyptic. This is what it's called, apocalyptic. You've heard the word apocalypse or apocalypse, apocalypsis, or even the movie Apocalypto is coming to my mind. If you've seen that one about the ancient Mayans, and it was kind of the end of their world. So we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff. I know you're going to have questions, and I'm going to keep pointing you to electronic. If you can email me or text me questions, I'll try to address them in the next message. If you want to go to the app, I hope you're going to the app. Today, for instance, I have a link to a great blog. This guy is just one of my favorite bloggers, Christopher Smith, and he has written to explain the different views called the millennial views, and we'll talk about it a little bit, but really it's about the end of time. He's written to explain how Christians think differently on these issues, and we don't have to disagree disagreeably. We can disagree agreeably and lovingly. So this is not a salvation issue how it's going to happen, but it is a salvation issue that it's going to happen. Because if you doubt the Lord's going to return, then you have a doubt of His lordship and that He's going to do what He said He was going to do. And besides that, the Bible is 30% prophecy. Did you know that? 30% of the Bible is prophecy. And that's kind of incredible. It makes you think that God is trying to tell us something about the future. And prophecy simply means a prediction about the future. 300 of those passages deal with the first coming of Christ. 300 deal with the first coming of Christ. And we know Jesus came. This is another bedrock belief of Christians, is that Jesus was real, that He really came and really put feet on the earth, and He did things that we can read about in the Gospels. Twice as many as there are about Him coming the first time are in the Bible about Him coming the second time. So if you're sure that Jesus came the first time, and I hope you are, we can be more than doubly sure that He's coming back. Jesus is coming back. So the question we're asking is, when will Jesus return? But I don't know if you've heard of the doomsday clock. You know, we're all watching the clock, but the doomsday clock, the doomsday scientists back in January moved the clock forward another 30 seconds, a half a minute, to 2 minutes before midnight. Now you can catch this online, you can Google it, and what they say is that we are closer today than the potential end of the world than we have ever been in the history of our world. In other words, we have the potential now, more so than at any other time in our history, to destroy ourselves. Of course, now this is January when they moved the clock forward. And in January, we were really worried about North Korea, and we still are worried about North Korea. I know in December they they called the National Guard Bureau, and the military called all the state chaplains to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, to talk about the possibility of imminent attack from North Korea. And it was kind of a secret, one of those classified meetings where we had to give up our electronic devices and everything that we had so that we couldn't record anything. And really the gist of it, and I'm not disclosing anything, is, the classified part was who's going and what are they going to do and what kind of things are going to happen. But the gist of it was this could happen any time. It could happen any time. And unlike when I deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan, we had a 2 or 3 month buildup, what you call mobilization, to go. This would happen within 3 to 5 days. We would have people, boots on the ground, in these places because of the devastation that it would cause. So the clock is ticking. And we're growing closer and closer to the end of time. Of course, just by virtue of being here and the clock ticking means we're getting closer to the end of time. So that's the question we're going to answer today is, when will Jesus return? When will he return? Now, I came across this picture recently in research for this message. And it's kind of, these are the wildfires in California. There's been terrible fires burning homes and buildings, all sorts of things. And this is a California picture. And the whole mountainside, if you can see this picture back a little bit, you see this whole mountainside on fire. But these guys thought maybe they should finish their round of golf, putt out before the fire came onto the golf course. Now, isn't that a picture of people today in our culture? Is that the whole world is burning and is about to be set on fire, yet we need to finish our game. And I don't know if it's ignorance or apathy. No doubt people are ignorant about this. I don't know, I'm not sure that we've done the best job of warning the world. I've been in places where there were street preachers who were preaching the gospel in a kind of a way that people kind of ignore. They just ignore because someone's preaching. And if someone's preaching, I'm not going to listen, because you're not going to tell me what to do. You're not going to tell me what to believe. So I'm afraid that even preaching has really, it's taken a hit. We have to be so different in how we present the truth of the gospel today, because people just aren't listening. And because they're not listening, they're not getting it. And so we have a lot of people in our world who are ignorant about this, who just don't believe, they don't know or don't believe it, that the world really is going to end in the way that the Bible says it's going to end. Or they know, but they just don't care. Now, I'm not so sure that Christian people are apathetic as much as we are kind of lazy. Those things go together, but I think sometimes we in the Christian world is that we kind of get lazy because, well, we've heard this all before. We've heard it all before. In fact, we have heard it all before. As early as, the first century, people were predicting the second coming of Christ. In AD 500, a theologian by the name of Irenaeus and a couple other of his buddies predicted the return of Christ based on the dimensions of Noah's ark. And there have been popes and mystics and theologians and astrologers and mathematicians and artists and musicians, even a retired sailor, who have predicted the end of the world. They've said this is when Jesus is coming back. There have been notable men, names you might recognize from history, men like John Wesley, who is considered the founder of the Methodist Church, who made a prediction about the end of the world. A guy by the name of Charles Russell, who is the founder of what we call the Jehovah's Witnesses, made several predictions about the end of the world. Joseph Smith, who founded the Mormon Church, predicted the end of the world based on America and what was going on in America. A guy by the name of Herbert Armstrong of the Worldwide Church of God made predictions. about the ending of the world. And maybe you remember in 1988, there was a guy named Edgar Wisnant who wrote a book called 88 Reasons Why Jesus Will Return in 1988. And so there have been many people who've said the Lord is coming back on this day. You remember Jack Van Impe? Anybody ever see him on TV? Man, he knew the Bible. He could quote the Bible. He loves, the Bible and lots of it. And he's a well-known premillennialist who has predicted the end of the world many times, and of course had to change them. There's been the Mayan calendar. I mentioned that earlier, 2012. Most recently, David Meade said because the sun and the moon and the planet Jupiter were in alignment in the constellation Virgo, the Lord's coming back on April 23rd. Well, April 23rd came and went. This same guy predicted last September that the Lord would return. And if you don't like those dates, there's plenty in the future. June 8th, 2019, there's a prediction about the Lord returning. There's a date in 2020, 2021, 2024, 2025, sometime between 2045 and 2057. And some of us might be alive then, right? In 2057. So the Lord could return, they say, at any moment. Now, are these people right for doing this? Well, yes and no. Yes and no. We're going to read a little bit later that there's no way they can know. But some people thought they would be alive. The Apostle Paul wrote this incredible chapter, in this section in this chapter in 1 Thessalonians, where he says, we who are still alive and remain. He says, we don't want you to be ignorant or uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you don't grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who've fallen asleep in him. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven, here's Paul's version of this, with a loud command, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. In other words, if you're fretting or worried about your loved ones who've died in Christ, don't worry about it. They're going to rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with him in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will be forever, therefore encourage one another. So Paul thought he would be alive, and that's encouraging. It is encouraging to know that in a world of trouble and chaos and terror, and kids have to go to school worried about school shootings and homegrown terror and across the ocean terror and decapitations, all the things we have in our world today, it's almost like this is a time unlike any other time in history, that something cataclysmic could happen tomorrow. And it would just be covered in the news until the next big news story. So we are living in an unusual time. And this passage is why we don't grieve like others who don't have hope. I've done funerals with people who didn't know Christ, who didn't follow Jesus. And it was a futile message that they had to bring home for their loved one. Preach the gospel to them, but their loved one, it was over. And that's what we believe as Christians. Now, there was a group of people who put all their hope in Christ, and we want to turn to the place in the scripture in Matthew 24 where they asked Jesus this very question that we're talking about today. The parallel passage, if you're interested, is Mark 13 and Luke 21. But in this passage, they asked Jesus the question you and I are asking today. Here it is. Jesus left the temple and was walking away when his disciples came to him to call his attention to its buildings. Here's what the disciples said. Look at all these buildings, man. This is an incredible piece of architecture. Jesus said, do you see all these things? Truly, I tell you, not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down. As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So there's the question that they asked Jesus. Like, whoa, you have just rattled our cages. You've kind of disturbed us a little bit. Now listen, you have to understand that this temple they were looking at, Herod's temple, was an incredible, magnificent piece of ancient architecture. When you look at ancient architecture, it's amazing what some of those ancient people can do. This was 1st century, and Solomon had this temple, Herod had this temple built in the fashion of Solomon's that was destroyed by the Assyrians. And so this was a great piece of work. And these disciples were looking at it, something that Josephus, the Jewish historian, said was like a gold, snow-covered mountain from a distance, because it was covered in gold and marble. And the disciples could not imagine anything happening to this building that wasn't earth-shattering, world-ending. Now, the debate that scholars have in this is, was Jesus asking 1 or 3 questions? Now, they might have remembered Luke 19 when Jesus said, the days will come, when he was looking at Jerusalem, he said, the days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you in on every side. They will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another, because you did not recognize the timing of God's coming to you. So, Jesus, more than we realize, predicted the end of Jerusalem and the end of this thing called the temple, that not one stone would be left on another. We just overlook that sometimes, is that he talked about it openly, but they could not imagine it happening. It'd be like you and I don't know, maybe not now, but perhaps 20 years ago, thinking that our whole country could be obliterated and life as it is would end. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid growing up, that never even crossed my mind. We were the greatest nation in the world, and we still are. And we had complete capability to not only protect, but to defend ourselves. But we didn't need to, because nobody would mess with us. But now we live in a world where that's not as true as it used to be. I mean, we're seriously kind of worried about some of these nations who have capabilities that could end life as we know it in our country or in other parts of the earth. So, this is what Jesus was saying. Look, to me, Jesus is saying, to me, this is all one event. That's why I think he's answering all 3 questions, but 1 question. To Jesus, a day is like 1,000 years. And the destruction of the temple, for him, was just one thing, one event in the course of human history that would lead to his return. So, I don't want to cause theological dissension where it's not needed. In other words, I don't want us to argue about something that we don't have to agree about. But I do want us to talk about some things. And again, I put the link on the church app if you want to read some more about the end of times and these different views. But what I want to do is, from Jesus' answer here in Matthew 24, I want to show you some things, and I want to tell you what I believe Jesus is really saying from this chapter. All right? And what we can really know for certain. So, the question in verse 3 was, when will this happen? What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Is that one question? All one question? Is it 2 questions? Is it 3 questions? Might be 3. Could be just 2. Might just be 1. I think to Jesus it was just one big question. And here's what he's saying. He's saying, first of all, don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. Verses 4 through 8 says, Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name claiming, I'm the Messiah, and will deceive many. You'll hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you're not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There'll be famines and earthquakes in various places. And listen to what he says here in verse 8. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Now, everything I just read, All of that stuff has already happened and is still happening and will continue to happen. There have been nation against nation. There have been earthquakes. There have been famines. All these things, wars and rumors of wars, they've been happening from the beginning. They're happening now. They will continue to happen. Jesus says, don't be alarmed. This is like the beginning of birth pains. It's like if you and I go down here to the hospital and we were walking around the hospital, and if we were walking through the hallway and we heard somebody go, oh, and screaming in pain, it might be alarming for us. Might be alarming. Unless we looked up and we saw maternity ward. And then we would think, oh, poor woman, she needs some medicine. Give her something, an epidural or something. But that's normal, isn't it? Ladies, they say it hurts, right? Can I hear an amen from the ladies? Yeah, they say it hurts. I've been through that 2 or 3 times, 3 times to be exact. And my wife was trooper. She was doing Sudoku and crossword puzzles, the whole time. But no, seriously, it hurt. And I made sure to stand back so she didn't grab my throat or anything. You know what I mean? But if I had been walking in another part of the hospital that wasn't the maternity ward, and I heard screaming, I'd be like, oh, that's bad. Well, Jesus is saying, look, this is normal. This is normal. He told us you're going to have trouble in the world, but He's overcome the world. Don't be alarmed. Don't be deceived. He says, don't be deceived by a false preacher or any person teaching a false gospel. He says, don't be deceived by world events. These things are going to happen. Don't get my grandmother or somebody in my family used to say, panties in a wad. Sorry about that image. Don't be deceived by natural disasters. Don't be deceived by how hard your life might get. Don't be deceived by, even in the darkness of your situation, God is still in control. God's still on the throne. He's still ruling, and He still will have His day. I want you to listen to this chapter. Greg, we're just going to go all the way through, all right? It's going to take 3 or 4 minutes, all right? But I want you just to listen to the rest of this chapter. It's going to take a while. I'm going to sit down.
Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop go down to take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath, for then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or there he is, do not believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you ahead of time. So if anyone tells you, there he is, out in the wilderness, do not go out. Or, here he is, in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, And then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Now, learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. Truly, I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. But about that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. For in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, up to the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing about what would happen until the flood came and took them all away. That is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with a hand mill, one will be taken and the other left. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch, and would not have let his house be broken into. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom the master has put in charge of the servants in his household to give them their food at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns. Truly, I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that servant is wicked and says to himself, my master is staying away a long time. And he then begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
All right, well, an incredible chapter, isn't it? Really incredible. Listen, Jesus really only makes 2 declarative statements in this chapter. He's giving a lot of details about things that are going to happen, but he only really says 2 big declarative statements. One is, don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. You know, it kind of reminds me, I recently took Jameson to see the movie Avengers. I don't know if you've seen the movie Avengers. We went to see the latest one, but I'm not really into it, but he's into it. So we went to see it, and it's kind of cool when you see these, these big things happening to people, and people are running everywhere. The big cities are running everywhere, and then come around the corner, one of the Avengers walks around like, hey, it's okay, it's no big deal. I got this. But everybody else is screaming and running and out of fear and terror and trying to get out of there. Well, you and I are like the Avengers. Don't be deceived. This stuff's going to happen, but we're okay. We're all right. And so the second declarative statement he says is stay alert. Stay alert, because this could happen anytime. A lot of these things Jesus talked about in Matthew 24 have already happened. Perhaps some of them haven't happened yet, but I think what he was saying when he said there that this generation will not pass away, it's almost like every generation is going to experience something like this. It's going to get bad for everybody. Our bad might be worse than 100 years ago bad, or vice versa. Their bad might have been worse than our bad, but in our perspective, man, this is really bad. Can it get any worse? Jesus said, look, this is going to be normal, because you live in the world, and the prince of this world is the devil, and the devil is pulling a lot of strings, and he is flashing a lot of lights and a lot of things in front of people, and they're taking the bait, and this is the kind of world you live in. Bad things are going to happen. Do not be alarmed. Do not be deceived, but stay alert. A few years ago, I was visiting one of our military police units in Camp Dawson, and I was watching as they were going through some of their training, and they were being sprayed in the eyes with the what's that called? Pepper spray, yeah. And I said, no, I can't do that because I got contacts in. But they were also being tased. I don't know if you've been tased. Maybe some of you have. And I showed this clip years ago when I did this. But there were these really tiny young ladies in uniform who were stepping up to be tased. And somebody talked me into it and said, hey, they're doing it. You ought to do it. You ought to set the standard. You ought to lead the way. And I said, boy, you're right. I'm going to do it. So I got up there, and they made me turn around. And I thought maybe they'd count to 3. Or I thought they'd say, okay, now. But they didn't do any of that. They just made you stand there like, oh, when's this going to happen? So you're supposed to try to relax, but you can't relax because you know you're about to get tased. And your whole body's going to go limp for 5 seconds. Or not limp, but stiff. And so that's kind of what Jesus is talking about here. Is that you got to be ready all the time because you don't want this to hit you like that. So you have to always be ready that this is going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Are you ready for it to happen? It's almost like going to the doctor and the doctor saying, hey, you got a massive heart attack in your future. I can't tell you when it's going to happen. I don't know where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing, but it's going to happen to you. How are you going to live your life? Because not too long from now, you're going to drop dead. And some people have. This could be your last day on the earth. Could be mine. Seriously, right? How should we live? We should be alert. Now, there's only one reason why when he comes back, you will not get an eternal reward, or you will get one. There's only one thing, and you know what that is. We sing about it. It's the one thing that really matters. It's the belief in, the acceptance of, trust in Jesus and the blood of Christ. It's the one thing that can save us, and it's the one reason you will not be saved if you do not trust in Him and buy into His way of life and His salvation and His redemption for your life. And totally go what we call all in here at Gateway. So, when will Jesus return? Well, I wish I could answer that question, but Jesus told us, we don't know. But I'm going to live my life like it could be today. Stay alert. Don't be deceived. It's coming. Let's pray. God, thank you for the sure and steady promise of your word, that you have not forgotten about us, that you will return. And Lord, even if it's after our lifetime, we take great comfort in knowing that you will not forget us even then, but you will return. And we believe that it will be in our lifetime. Perhaps, Lord, you have a different timetable, but help us to live our life like you wanted us to, like you told your disciples, like the servant who said, my master could come home today, and I want to be ready. And so, God, I pray that you would touch our hearts and lead us to the cross. That's our prayer in Christ's name. Amen. If you're here today and you're not a Christian, I'm just telling you that today could be your last day. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just speaking truth to you. And you need to take care of business while you can. So let's stand up and sing this song. If you need to take care of business with the Lord, you come forward and talk to me or Joel while we're singing, and we'll get you going.